Hello and welcome to the Creative Business Podcast, the podcast that aims to help you build a better, more successful creative business. And here we are for our second week on video as well as on audio. How you doing, Marcus?
Good, Nathan. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Struggling through customer support at the moment, but apart from that, not too bad. Still got the hand
Nobody
plastered
likes.
up.
Ah,
Went to the hospital today for my first follow-up appointment and got the day wrong. So I don't have to go until next week. So I'd managed to convince a friend to very kindly come and pick me up as I can't drive 8 o'clock in the morning, and got there and they said, no, it's next week. So that
did
was
did you
that.
at least buy your friend a cup of coffee
Yeah, we
or
went.
a
We went and
Danish?
had breakfast. Yeah,
Okay, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but next week you'll give us an update on the hand. It
next
sounds
week I'll
like
give you an update on the hand. So how was your week been anyway?
it's been great. Like the weather here, it stopped snowing, and so the sun is shining. I just am looking forward to summer. We've got 3 workshops booked in the U.S., so we're really excited about that. And then we're doing a week in Hawaii, watching my granddaughter. So life is good.
A week in Hawaii. That sounds good by anybody's standards, right?
I know, and I get to watch my granddaughter while my son and his wife play in Hawaii. I'm fine with that. Like, just give me the little baby, and then we'll do little grandpa things, and it'll be fun.
Cool, cool. So last week we were discussing sort of some of the common pitfalls or areas where folks tend to struggle with proposals,
It's tough.
and we kind of left it halfway through last week because there's just so much to talk about, and so we're gonna pick it up again, right, from where we left
Yeah.
off last week. And I don't know if there was any particular place you wanted to start.
I really like the idea of like let's hit on the balance between design and the content.
Hmm.
Let's revisit that for a second because you're a designer. I am not. I was actually going to ask you your opinion about just how much design needs to go into a proposal. I obviously last week told my story about our art designer doing a custom photo shoot of motorcycles, and he bought all this equipment. Like it was a big investment. Didn't land us the deal. Didn't even get us to like a hey oh nice proposal. We got
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah, yeah.
But I know it can't probably be like a handwritten piece of paper. So somewhere between a handwritten note and a video package, right, that took 7 weeks to produce, lies a balance that's effective. What is a designer? What have you found to be effective about proposal design?
Well, I think there is a healthy balance because, like you said, it can't just be a piece of paper or a Word document. But I think almost in some cases it could be. I think it depends very much on the type of business you're working with. Don't get me wrong; you would still need to have your branding. That would still need to be strong. It would still need to be well formatted, laid out, etc. But I think, and this is my personal feeling, is that back in the day, I did used to use InDesign to write and manage my proposals. Well, there is no management in InDesign. It's find and replace everything's manual and looking for files. But I use that because it did give me complete control over the layout and the design. Which meant I could spend way more time than I probably should have. On every single proposal, and that's just before I even get to writing it. Um, so I think, yeah, there is a happy medium, and as you said in your story last week, you guys actually experienced the other end of things where you were producing sort of high end catalog style photo
Right.
shoots, glossy, could almost be an IKEA catalog type
It was
proposal.
beautiful.
A beautiful thing. It was a thing of beauty, but and the results weren't there. So I think it's difficult because I've spoken to lots of designers over the years, and they say we need to have complete control over the way our proposals are designed and the way they're laid out. And then you see sometimes that's not always enough control as certain agencies or designers would like. But my thinking is, and it keeps harking back to the same thing every time. The relationship that you have built, I hope that you have started to build with a client, counts for everything. It counts for
Everything.
95 or 99% of the entire process. So once you got to that proposal stage, it's almost just like a confirmation of everything you've already discussed up to that point with your client in those interviews. So yes, your proposal design, your proposal layout should be strong. That simply means it should be well organized. You should have your headings clearly labeled. You should be able to distinguish from one section to another. If you need to include images, that's great. Include images. I wouldn't encourage anyone to go out and to create the catalog, because if you're doing that, for me, and forgive me, Marcus, for saying this after your story, that if you are doing that, it's almost like you are trying to sell something that just there hasn't been enough research done initially. You are selling something because there isn't enough substance to what is actually going into the proposal. Content is king. In any market, content is king. If the content is king and you've understood what the client needs, then the design of the proposal can be minimal. I think that's my thinking.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it can be a Word document. It's funny, as you were talking, it reminded me, like a proposal. What's the other context that I've used a proposal in is only one time in my life, but it was a very important proposal to me, and it actually involved this, and that's my wedding band. That was a proposal. I was a poor guy, so I did not do the photo shoot. It was more like, it would be lucky if it would have typed Word document equivalent, my proposal to my wife 28 years ago. But it's ridiculous to imagine I would have shown up on the first date and had a proposal ready that was skywriting and balloons and a big a carriage ride through the park. That would be ridiculous, because she'd say, well, you've gone to a lot of work here, but we don't even know each other. And that's really repelling. Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder, if the right proposal is for the right person at the right time. So it definitely needs to be more about them. For my wife, she was simple. The time was right. I got down on one knee in the rain. It was a memory we'll never forget. But I didn't have any money. I just needed to say the right words at the right time. And I knew the words that she needed to hear to feel like this was a proposal she could accept. And I think it's not that much different with your clients. You're right. It's don't rush into it. Maybe I guess that's kind of where I'm going. If you don't have the relationship, like you said, that's what it comes back to. So if you talk with a client, you meet somebody at a party, and the first thing you do is say, well, we've talked for 5 minutes. I'll get you a proposal. That's probably not.
That happens all the time. That does. No problem. I'll get a proposal out to you by the end of the day. How is that going to happen? How is that going to happen?
Right. Yeah. And how do you, I remember I made this mistake at networking functions. Oh, I need a new website. Oh, what do you want it to do? I want it to sell stuff. I'll get you a proposal for that. Sure. Yeah. And it's so ridiculous. So what do people do instead? Well, you invest in the relationship, right? At least that's what I finally learned was have a second date, third date, get to know the person and get to know their business and what they really need. And then I think that you're right, it has to be on brand. I think it has to represent you as a professional, but it sure does not need to be as ridiculous as we made ours.
Do you think perhaps, and there could possibly be exceptions to this? For example, the company that you sent off the brochure style, catalog style proposal to, was that a big company with a lot of money behind, would you say, or?
No, it wasn't. It was a smaller company. They were making electric motorcycles. It was a kind of a startup. Maybe they were 5 years in, and they had definitely some amount of national presence in terms of but it was a small company based locally. So it was small. Why do you ask?
I just wonder if in some instances it's the accepted format, if it's a huge Fortune 500, that is working in a particular field, maybe, cars or something, I don't know. Maybe it's almost like the expected thing for the RFP or proposal to come in this hugely over-formatted version. I don't know. I mean, I don't have experience in that area. So, I mean, whenever I talk about proposals, I can only speak from my own experience and from that we've seen from customers, which tends to be from the freelance consultant up to mid to large size agencies, where hopefully there is always that sort of one-on-one connection at some level or another.
It's funny. I've worked with large agencies that'll do projects above 1 million, significantly above 1 million, and they certainly seem to have, like, I'm sure they had a designer sit down and design it. Probably not a custom photo shoot, but they have kind of a nicer template than I had. But oftentimes it was minimalistic and clean, and they would use more pages but more punchy copy, right? Mm-hmm. To sort of, they really seem to spend the time on copy more than design. That's a good question. I don't know. I think if you're listening and you're doing and your proposals are if they're not winning and you're spending a lot of time on them, maybe this is just an area you can experiment with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I worked in agencies in the past where they would do the same thing as your catalog style proposal. They would go out on a limb. They would compete against other agencies and put together a huge presentation, that would then be delivered, as a proposal in one format or another. And it was a huge investment of time and money, and they were always competing directly with other businesses doing exactly the same thing. It's a long time since I've been a part of that world, thankfully, but it seems like a lot of work for not necessarily the greatest odds.
Now I do have a friend who works at a big agency, and he goes into big companies and does exactly like you're saying, except they compete. They will bring in 4 people and do a pitch day for, say, a national chain of restaurants, and there'll be 3 companies. Each company will have 3 or 4 people, and they will have slides and materials, and this is a big affair. This took weeks, but I'm talking, and you are talking about a proposal, the thing that gets sent. That usually has, let's go back to it. It usually needs to talk about what problem we're trying to solve, what options they have to solve it, what price ranges and time frames we see for those options, and then maybe some way to get feedback, or maybe they just sign it and go, right? And I'm sure there's some other stuff, but to me, those are the bones of a proposal.
So another thing then that would come into this is the length. Some people, again, this is an area where they can sometimes get a little concerned. How long should my proposal be? And I have always been of the school that the shorter and more concise the better. Why make it longer than it needs to be? Some people, I think, perhaps out of fear, think they need to fill it with fluff. Which could be all the great work we've done.
Our bios.
Here's the team. Here's the entire team. The head of tech, the head of development, the head designer. Again, if that relationship is there, they don't care. They know all this already. They know you. They've been speaking to you. And we've seen at Nusi that over 80% of proposals accepted are between 5 and 8 sections long, 5 and 8 pages, old school style. So. You would never include more than necessarily, if you wanted to increase your chances of closing that deal, 8 sections, 8 pages. And me personally, I'd never wrote more than 5 ever.
I agree. Shorter is better. In fact, these days I only do 1-page proposals, and I really keep it to 1 page.
Oh, nice.
Sometimes I'll do an addendum, but I will specifically call it out as like the requirements addendum. But the other thing I had found is very large companies, when you're doing a $500,000 piece of work, nobody's really making the decision, like you said, on the design. It almost becomes just the easier it is to put into a contract. So like if it's just a Word document, sometimes that's almost a little bit beneficial, because definitely the lawyers are going to be involved, right?
Yeah. Actually, I think, but that's interesting though. A 1-page proposal means you have to have really nailed the entire process that goes before to be confident enough to just say, this is everything we spoke about. This is pretty much everything we agreed to, and here it is. Let's go.
It's really simple. It's like, this is the goal. This is the outcome you want to achieve. This is the high level constraints. These are a few assumptions. Now I'm forgetting, but the goal, the constraints, the assumptions, like maybe 1, maybe 2 price options with time frames, and then okay, that's it. Like this, and then the other thing though is I never send them cold. I always get on a video call and then I send it to the person while we're on the call, and I talk through it with them. I will never let someone get a proposal anymore cold. It is always a conversation. And I don't, even though they'll say, well, send it to me in advance and I'll review it. I say, it's one page. We're going to review it together. There's no need for that sending in advance stuff, because I want to make sure that I've been clear.
That's that's an interesting approach. Funnily enough, we more and more recently we've had a lot of requests for a live chat widget in a proposal, and I guess it's almost it's almost like a similar thing, isn't it? Just to be able to be on hand when your client is reading through the proposal. And I know that you personally have always walked your customers through the proposal, when it's been delivered, get on the phone and just running through. And to be honest, that's not something I ever did, but obviously people are smarter now than I was back in the day, because they're really jumping on this sort of being available at the time when the proposal is being viewed, which it makes sense, right?
I think that I didn't always do it. I used to just send and pray, right? And then never hear back. We could talk about rejection and all that stuff, but what I found was, if somebody's right in front of me, when they look at the number, their face changes, or when they see it, they immediately, and I can sort of say, well, let's start at the top, or take a moment and read it. And then I'll say, do you have what's your reaction to this? And I'll just kind of open it up like that. Excuse me, because I don't want to just wonder if they understood it. I want to know that I want them to know they can ask me a question right then. And actually, that's part of the relationship I want to build, is the kind where they can just ask me a question.
Oh, sorry. I just realized my voice had disappeared. I was just saying that I was just thinking about what I said about 80% of proposals having between 5 and 8 sections. It was actually 3 to 5. So we get even closer.
Shorter.
So we get even closer to your version, which is good to know. I was thinking, because after I said that, I was like, is that right? Is that right? Is that right? Try and give out the correct information.
So shorter may not be better. Don't feel the need to put everything in there to prove that the proposal is that you're worth it. Basically, prove that you're worth it in other ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we touched on this last week as well, and I just wanted to bring something up because I listened back to last week's episode and felt I kind of glossed over something. The whole offering pricing packages to your customers, giving them options, which is for me is the way forward, and it's the way that you're almost guaranteed to sort of get that sale done, and signed. But one thing I didn't mention really was this whole. I mentioned that sending out an old quote, a traditional style quote, is not a good thing to do, because you're just literally listing out your services with an associated cost, and that's it. But the other reason behind not doing that is you are not giving any choice to your client. If it doesn't happen to fit within their budget, or there happens to be something in there that they don't think is required, then it becomes an either or situation. You can either work with me for this, or you choose to go elsewhere. The client will always see, well, this doesn't suit me then. This total cost, I can't work with it. It's either above, or even in fact you're too cheap or whatever, because I never got your budget. But
right.
There's no value associated to that, because it's just work with me for this or don't work with me. And I feel I completely glossed over that last week, which I think is an important thing. That's the reason we give people options. It's so that they feel there is more than one path going forward. So just
now, you mentioned this last week too, the idea of the Chinese menu. Remind me, this is, if you're not familiar with it, if you're listening, I think this is where we break out. For example, if you're doing a website, Chinese menu might have SEO work as one line. It might have copyright. Like, doesn't it sort of break out?
It's where you break down absolutely every single part of the project into a line item and give, in the worst case scenario, in my opinion, the number of hours associated to that task, the hourly cost, and then a total on the same line. And just doing that one after another, and then with a final total at the bottom. See, the problem I have with that is that you're just not selling any value whatsoever. All you're doing is selling your technical capabilities, and that's it. They can't see the value. The great thing about a pricing package or offering packages is that you forget all the line items completely. They disappear. You say, look, everything that we discussed, everything that you need to get this project going and to be successful is going to be included. And I'm going to just write it up in a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to achieve. Talking obviously about their goals, talking obviously about the objectives and how we're going to get there. And then it's to do this to your business, it's going to cost you X, instead of just this continual, endless list of, menu items.
Yeah, I guess that would be like if, we talked about how I just finished building a house last year. I guess if the contractor had said like hammering is one item, and,
exactly,
using the drill is another. Do you want us to use the drill? Like how ridiculous?
Yeah.
We've done a few of those kind back in the day, and my biggest, I realized it was a really bad idea when a customer who wanted more local traffic chose a menu. Options from the menu that would absolutely guarantee that they had a really bad website at the end, because they were making the choices. They're like, well, we don't want copywriting, but we want a lot of great design, and we want SEO, but no copywriting. And I was like, well, and then I started to realize if I was going to deliver anything I was proud of, they couldn't just pick and choose from the menu. I had to use my brain to help them figure out what was needed.
Yeah, totally. Another area that we didn't mention last week, and it's been coming up more and more as well, is do we need to create a sense of urgency when it comes to proposals? In Nusi you can use an expiry date. Some people like to put, I don't know how, a timer, like, as if you were selling a bestseller and it was on offer.
Like
and
a
it was
countdown?
I don't know. To me that just sounds cheesy. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts? Was this something that you ever did back in the agency, or?
Yeah, I mean, we did it some. Well, first, we never did anything. So we would send it out and not hear anything. And then usually we didn't get it. But I think one time, like 2 months later, somebody came back and said, okay, I'm ready to start. And we were like, oh, we had forgotten we had even sent it. But most of then we started putting something in there that just said, this expires in 10 days. Mm-hmm. I think I probably did it to create some urgency, but there was actually a practical reason I had done it as well. For us, in order to bid the work, I had gone out and found contractors, negotiated pricing. I had essentially kind of figured out what my pricing was going to be at this point of time with the team that I had to deliver it. Mm-hmm. And if they were going to delay it by 3 months, that was really going to throw my pricing out the window. I was going to find different people. They were going to charge me different amounts. And so what I started doing was saying like, well, the quote expires after a certain amount of time simply because my prices might change, especially if you're using contractors and one is $50 an hour and one is $100 an hour. If you told the $50 an hour person, hey, I've got something for you, we should know in 2 weeks, would you save me a spot? And they agree to it. Well, if you lose that spot, you might have to go to the $100 an hour person. Yeah. And so that might actually affect the price. Okay.
Yeah. The whole expiry date thing I'd never really used in the past, probably because it was always more of a personal relationship. So they were expecting the proposal, etc. One thing I did do, and I didn't always do this, but to help grease the wheels, was to offer a small discount for a 100% upfront payment. So ordinarily I would work in usually a 50% upfront and then maybe 25, just completely depending how long the project was going to be. For me, working as a freelancer, projects were always going to be a lot smaller than, an agency where things might go on for months and months. But in those cases, I would offer the, 100% payment upfront and give like 5% off, I think. And when you're talking about projects that are up in the tens of thousands of dollars, it can be a significant reduction. And people did actually take me up on that, and it was, it's great for you because you get the money in the bank there and then before you start,
right.
And the client's happy because, if they're going to pay that money anyway and they have confidence in you, if you've created that confidence, then it's good for them as well because obviously they get a substantial discount.
Yeah, I do know somebody that and this is not this is actually more of a coaching product where they will say to people who they talk to, they have a sales call, they talk about the person's needs and the project, and then they say, okay, it's going to be $6,000, but they will say, I am going to offer you I think they call it a 24-hour decisive discount. And you can save 20% if you decide to do this in the next 24 hours. But the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And I thought I like the idea of a decisive discount. I don't know how this person tells me that they get a lot of business that way. It might be also, though, because people who come on the call are already ready to go. So I don't have any science around that.
Okay. Well, what about?
But in general, I think, just last thought here, maybe, I think 30-day expiration is fine. But if people are constantly, why not just ask people and say, when are you hoping to make a decision about this? One question I remember I asked one time was, we usually put an expiration date on this. What would you like your expiration date to be? You're actually getting them to think about, how much time do I want? And then if they say, well, we're going to need 30 days. Oh, great. I put that right in there. Yeah. That's actually from them. It's not from you.
And of course, as well as the sense of urgency, which I'm not convinced that it adds a sense of urgency, but what it does do is allow you as well to plan, as you were saying, it allows you to plan your workload and know that, okay, they have an answer within 10 days. Right. I know that, I need to make a space for the next project, which could come in, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, if you don't know what's going on, it's going to be pretty difficult when they come back in 15 days and say, oh, we're ready to go now. And you have to turn around and say, well, I'm very sorry, but you're going to have to wait a month now because...
Right. Yeah. I guess, if you wouldn't do it in a marriage proposal, I don't think you'd say well, we need to know in 10 days on this. Then you should reconsider doing it in a work proposal.
Yeah. All right, then. So what about, and this is something that, funnily enough, a lot of people just don't even think about for one reason or another, is about the next steps. I always included at the end a next steps, like what comes next. And I would spell it out literally, what do you have to do now as my potential client to move forward? What do I need from you? What do you need from me to get things moving? And I would say, if it was a case of putting down a discount, I would say, first of all, to get the ball rolling, click the accept button up above. I'm going to send you an email where we can get, I'll give you whatever, a credit card transfer or whatever that payment might be. I'll contact you again by phone. Just let them know exactly what the process is going to be. So it's not just a case of, right, okay, I've accepted the proposal. And sort of that now what happens? The easier you can make it for someone to accept and to feel happy with that, then, the better position you're in, I think.
This is an area I think that I don't know if I have a lot of good advice. I mean, I'm trying to think about this because as soon as, especially with Nusi as a proposal software, there is an accept button. So setting clear expectations about what happens after they click accept, right? I mean, should they? And I don't remember how you guys have it set up, but I like how you say you have to. It is important to let people know, once you do that, here's the next thing that will happen. Otherwise, it can be a bit surprising, right?
Yeah, well, if for example you just click the accept button and it's signed, it's kind of like, well, now what? Are they going to write to me? Are they going to ring me? Are they going to, when's this going to begin? So I just think the clearer you can be at this stage, the easier you make it for them, and the more comfortable they are in just actually accepting in the first place.
That I agree. I know, right? I send my proposals through, usually I'll send them through email, or again, right when we're on the call and we'll talk about it. And so it's very easy to talk about next steps. But when I send a contract, for example, I will lay out okay, I'm going to send you the contract with SOW. You're going to sign it. That's step one. And the email will have 5 steps. Then I'm going to ask you to pay X amount. Then I'm going to set up our initial call. Then we're going to dive in and do X, Y, and Z. So I do try and set that idea that, it's not like you're going to accept it and then not know what happens next.
Well, after all that, I've got to ask you, why aren't you using Nusi?
That thought went through my mind right there. I probably I mean,
We gotta
I
get
don't
you
have a
in.
good
We gotta get you in.
answer.
People are gonna think I'm a tight ass and I haven't offered you an account.
No, you have, and I probably even have an account. Oh, okay. Can we just skip by
Let's
this
skip
part?
by this. Let's skip by
I
this.
think I only do 2 proposals a year anymore, and they're honestly only to the same company where literally I send an email. And I've worked with these people for 15 years. So they will call me up and say, we need X, Y, and Z. And I'll say, okay, like, here you go. And I'll send you an email with a number. And then they'll just email me back and say yes. So that's the kind of
I let
proposals
you
I
off. I
like.
let you off. Right. So next steps.
Next
Told
step's
them what
very
to
important.
do. You've told them what to do. Hit accept. Good to go. And what do? They hit reject. Or they politely tell you on the phone, or live chat, or however they do it. Not gonna go for this.
Or
What?
they just say, well, think about it, and then it's silence.
Yeah. So what do we do? What happens here? What's your experience? What's apart from feeling like crap?
Oh, so crappy. So terrible. Well, right? I think that either you're going to get it right. Okay. Like my gut always tells me as soon as the reason I feel like crap is my gut always tells me, oh, you lost it. You made him mad or it was too much or whatever. Um, so if they say, well, we're going to think about it, right? Which I get that more than I get just rejection is, well, let us think about it. I will just ask, well, great. I think you should. It's a big decision like buying a car or anything else.
Mhm.
When should I follow up with you? And again, I'm asking for permission to come back to them in a couple of, whether it's a couple of days or a week, but I'm trying to get a sense of how long they're hoping to evaluate it. Sometimes, but if you don't hear anything, like does this must happen on Newsy, people view it and they don't hit accept or reject, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's.
What do you do?
Well, there was obviously a period of time, that's there for follow up, because it's different. Obviously, if you're presenting it digitally than via the phone, because you have that immediate contact, and obviously you can do the same thing as well, regardless of how you present it, whether it's digitally or email or even by snail mail, But that sort of not knowing, yeah, it's the worst. It's especially when you've had the email saying, "Hey, such and such has opened your proposal," and like, great, okay, well, why haven't they clicked on accept? I'm still here waiting. I think
Right.
obviously it's on you to follow up at some point, and you can sort that out as well within Nusi, to remind yourself to follow up on the proposal after X number of days. But like you said, and I love the way you do this with almost with every sort of customer interaction. It's putting the onus on them, or rather letting them make the decision, so
Right.
they feel like again that they're in control, and it's just not Marcus sitting. Well, he's telling me when to get into
Yeah.
and I really like that. I really do like that. But I think outside of following up, whether that's by phone, email, whatever, I don't know. You are certainly, you're tied. Your hands are tied to a certain degree, aren't you? If it just becomes radio silence, then after following up a few times, then there's not an awful lot you can do, is there? I mean, you can't go
Well,
pounding down the door.
that's right. Now, the only option I do know is the magic email, and that has worked for me phenomenally. Are you familiar with the magic email? I think you're muted.
I have heard about this. Sorry, yeah, spill the beans.
Well, have you used it?
I think I used it once, and I don't know if the result was favourable. But
Well, if you Google for the magic email, basically you send, let's pretend it's almost like the nuclear option, right? You've put out the proposal. Maybe even made a couple of friendly, oh, I saw you opened it on Newsy and I'd love to talk it through. Did you have any questions? So if a period of weeks go by and before you give up, you can use the magic email and, people say it gets like an 80% response rate. And the email is just this one line. And I used to have it memorized. Let's see if I can remember it. If you Google it, you'll find it. But I think the one line is, because I have not heard back from you, I must assume your priorities have changed.
yeah,
That's it. You don't put a greeting. You don't put anything else. It's one sentence. Boom. That's it. And when somebody receives that, they sort of have to ask themselves, well, first, it looks like you're really retracting. You're going to take away their ability to get what they wanted. And second, oh, maybe maybe my priorities have changed. And I've certainly had people come back to me and say, yeah, we lost our budget for that. But I've also had a lot of people say, no, I've just been super busy. Let's schedule a time to talk.
Yeah,
So,
I was just checking this now on Google, and there is actually now Kurt Elster. Go and check out
right.
Kurt Elster if you know him. The domain is actually themagicemail.com, so you won't have any problems finding that.
That's right. That's right. And Kurt came up with this as a way to re-engage people and sort of because at the end of the day, what you want is to get the conversation flowing.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked my clients, what would you have, what would you like to see changed in this proposal? That's hard to do because you always fear they're going to say price.
Mm-hmm.
But frankly, they don't usually say price to me. They'll say, well, I really think we might need this other thing, and I wasn't sure if you offered it. Or we didn't need this part. I didn't feel. Do we have to? Like, they had some changes they might like to have, but they weren't sure how to approach you about it.
Yeah.
So they just said nothing.
Yeah, and I think, especially if you do get the dreaded reject, they've rejected the proposal, it can be invaluable to send out that email, and you might think that nobody's going to respond, but just asking, where they felt I fell short, so the more feedback you can get on those areas, well, I felt uncomfortable because you didn't seem to be offering this service, and this is what I kind of really needed. Even though, yes, it feels like crap to get rejected in any way, shape, or form, asking for that feedback and getting that feedback is only going to help you for the next proposal, and it is a learning process, and you will get better with each one, regardless of what happens, So it's invaluable, to send out the magic email if you haven't heard back, and if it does finally result in being rejected, then definitely have the courage to reach out and say, I'd love to know how I didn't live up to your expectations, so I can improve for the next proposal. And I think you'd probably be surprised on the number of people that will get back to you on that, even if they took you weeks.
Yeah. What about this idea? And I don't think I've done this, but it dawns on me that I'm going to try it. What if you reached out and you said, thanks for your feedback. I got that I got the notification that you rejected the proposal. I'd love to hear how we can make version 2 a better fit for you. Mm-hmm. That sort of automatically implies we're not at the end of the road. But there is a future. The future is going to be version 2. So let's talk about how do we need to get version 2 of the proposal changed in order to fit with you. And that should spark a conversation. I don't think you always have to just go back and say, well, you rejected version 1, and so therefore you must hate me, and I'll put my tail between my legs and be Mr. Marcus Eeyore and be sad. maybe you can sort of just take the arrogant, which I think is actually a more confident approach of, great, the first one didn't fit. Let's talk about how the second version can be something that really excites you.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea a lot. It's not something that ever occurred to me before. So yeah, I really like that.
I don't know. If you're out there and you try it, let us know how it works. I'm going to try it next time I put a proposal in that gets rejected.
Well, I mean, I was going to say it can't hurt, can it? If you already think the deal is done anyway, then why not?
And I don't know why. I'm going to come back to it again. Let's go back to the marriage proposal. If you offer a marriage proposal and the woman or the man says no, that probably doesn't mean it's the end of the relationship. But it does mean you need to say, okay, now what? What are we going to do going forward? You continue the conversation. Maybe you remain engaged. Maybe something else is going on. But if you think about it, like, your proposal isn't just, I don't think the buttons say accept me or reject me, do they? Right?
Not yet, no. That could be V2.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. So anyway, yeah, think about it as just a point. You might even, when you send the proposal, I don't know if this would make sense, Nathan. You're the proposal expert. But if when you send it, you set that expectation of, if you hit accept, this is what's going to happen. If you hit reject, I'll come back to you and ask how we can make version 2 better. Like, you could actually set that expectation about what happens when you hit either button rather than just only the accept button. Like, because they might actually be fearful if they hit reject, that means that you'll never talk to them again.
Mm-hmm. No, I like it. I really like the way you do put these things back on the client, you know, the sort of, so they're the ones who feel in control as opposed to us feeling that we, you know, everything is on our shoulders, you know. We and to a certain extent it is, but I like the way that at least the psychology of it is reversed. And I know you do that in a lot of instances, so I have to be careful when I'm talking to you.
Well, you know, I really do want them to be in control. I've had to learn to have quietly confident boundaries about what I would or would not do. But in a lot of ways, if they're not the ones in control, then at the end of the day, they're going to feel pushed around. They're going to feel manipulated. All I want is for them to have a great experience and for us to do good work together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Well, I think we've probably pretty much exhausted our time again this week. And I think if we've learned anything from today, it's all about client relationships.
That's right.
Everything. It all comes down to client relationships. I mean, everything we do, you know, the proposal, the work, the follow-up, you know, everything we do in our business comes down to client relationships, I think. And that's the great thing, and also the challenging thing, I think, about what we do, you know. So
yeah, because none of us got into this business to say what I hope to do, I mean, is to just focus almost exclusively on client relationships. We all wanted to design things, write code, build servers, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
This is just a necessary evil. But if you could overcome that idea and realize it is the core of helping people, I think your business will be a lot better.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, then. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed these last couple of episodes, particularly, you know, especially what was I going to say about, you know, proposals, the whole proposal scenario. Oh dear, this is so difficult now. We can't edit the videos and things like that, but out it goes anyway. Okay, so any other topics or subjects you'd like to hear Marcus and I discuss? Any ideas you have for the show, for the podcast? Do we need to be doing live episodes? Do we need to get people in? Do we need to have a live chat and questions? Do we need to disappear? We're not going to do that. Let us know. So you can write to us at podcast@thecreativebusinesspodcast. We now have the YouTube channel. So if you go and search for Creative Business Podcast, you'll find our videos that are being uploaded there. So you can feel free to go and share, give us a thumbs up, like, leave comments, the whole works. Yeah, so we leave it there, right, Marcus?
That's it. Next week again.
Fantastic. Well, you have a great weekend, mate, and we'll both be back same time next week.
Same time, same place. Have a good weekend.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.